So, Ray, we are headed into the All-Star break. Our New York Mets of Major League Baseball are in first place. And you know what? I still can't tell if we're good or not.
Well, I'll tell you who's good. Smashmouth and Wilson.
Oh, do you have recent experience with them?
That's why we haven't recorded one of these new episodes in a couple of weeks, because I've been busy taking care of both of them.
Oh, you've been working out on the road as a tour manager for the first time in a very long time in this post-COVID world. Sounds like you might have some stories. Let's get into that.
I think that's a good idea.
Hey now.
Hey now.
Hey, this is my friend, Ray.
What's up? This is my friend AD.
Ray is a tour manager who's traveled the world with everyone from the Beastie Boys to the Rolling Stones, engineered artists from Devo to Jane's Addiction to Toni Braxton, and looked after the careers of comics like Jim Gaffigan and Dane Cook.
And AD is a national radio personality, heard on stations across the country, who started off as a major label recording artist that gave me my first job as a tour manager.
I still can't believe that ended well.
Well, we still talk all the time now, and when we do, it's about music and cooking and baseball, especially our beloved New York Mets.
This is Bands, Barbecue, and Baseball.
All right, so first and foremost, let's address the elephant in the room. Haven't done this in a minute, and the reason we haven't done this in a minute was because Ray was out on the road working as a professional tour manager. If you're new to the podcast, Ray has tour managed pretty much everyone from Beastie Boys to Rolling Stones to yours truly back in the day when I was in a band, to Brian Setzer to System of a Down and everybody else in between. But you had like a year and a half off of that because of COVID, but you went out on the road for the first time in this post-COVID world with Ann Wilson of Heart and Smashmouth. Talk about that.
Well, first of all, it's all been downhill since my first gig with you back in the day. Every other artist since then has just been paled in comparison.
Well, you know what's interesting? When we actually, so we live in completely different places. We do this from our own private bunkers, and never see each other in person while we're doing it. But we actually got a chance to hang out while you were on tour. Weird thing. And I remember I did ask you. I was like, hey, what's who's the most easygoing normal? Because Ray has stories, probably some that he can't discuss on the air about artists and their, let's say, idiosyncrasies. And I was like, who's the most normal, down to earth person you've ever tour managed? You're like, you. I was like, oh, that's probably why I didn't make it.
I literally struck gold the first one that I toured with, and it's been a downhill spiral ever since.
Well, and from what you told me, Ann Wilson's still kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah, she shocked me. Not shocked me, like I've been following along what she's been doing. Just actually recently, she performed not too long ago with Government Mule, and I watched it, and it was awesome. So the coming back of touring, in my personal opinion, it definitely feels awkward. Still being kind of in this COVID mindset. It's been so long since so many people have done their gigs across the board. It's like reinventing the wheel in everything. There's a lot of tentative kind of vibes and feelings about everything. So it was interesting. I mean, it definitely felt like a year or so break, but it maybe even felt like longer than that. The way that it was all coming together.
Yeah. So did it feel like? I mean, did you feel like you were relearning things? What did you have to do differently now as opposed to pre-COVID?
Definitely catering. Catering used to be a buffet free-for-all-ish kind of thing that everyone can just kind of go in, and that's gone by the wayside. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever see buffet style restaurants or anything again. So literally everything individually packaged, 3 meals a day, actually with after-show food, etc., and really trying to keep everything completely isolated so that no one had any common areas where they're looking for going for food. That was a huge change. And then, I mean, honestly, travel right now is very, very strange. Flying and the airports, etc. They're hustling and bustling, but it just feels so strange. And so many people in this industry, in our industry, wind up really having to take different jobs and leave the industry. So now it's left so many things in flux as coming back. There are shortages of drivers. There's shortages of airline attendants and personnel. So that flights are being cut and everything. That's actually working out in almost every transportation model. So trucking buses, local ground transportations, Ubers. I mean, everything is still in flux.
Did it make you wonder what it's like to be a baseball team on the road? Because I was actually thinking about that when you were telling me some of the things that you went through getting band members from A to B. I was like, what must it be like? Like herding an entire baseball team and the associated people around the country in this day and age. I mean, obviously it's Major League Baseball, and they've got all sorts of precautions and stuff in place. But I don't care. It's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of different attitudes towards vaccinations. All trying to get from A to B together. It's just, it's a Herculean feat for guys like you whose job it is to essentially herd kittens.
Well, it's definitely herding kittens, feral kittens. But the one thing I've noticed, and speaking to a couple of other tour managers and production managers of other groups that are going out, the taxi squad mentality that baseball went through last year, and which I believe are still kind of carrying through this year, that's actually going through in several of the larger touring acts that are literally having to pay crew to kind of sit in the wayside, like ready at a moment's notice, and vaccinated, trained, packed, and ready to go, because if somebody comes down with something on the road and they have to do a swap out, they're at least ready for it, which is something this industry has never had to really conceive of. It's always been seat of the pants, and a lot of history with people who are touring with people. And if you've got a front of house engineer who's been mixing a band forever, if that guy comes down with something with COVID and needs to be taken off the playing field, basically, that's a whole thing that has to be dealt with. So that's one thing that I noticed in terms of just logistic wise. Logistics right now are without a doubt complicated.
What about the actual show? I mean, how does Ann Wilson sound? You said great, but just last time I heard her sing was a couple years ago, and just unbelievable to have pipes like that at all ever in your life, but to maintain those pipes as you go on through life. I mean, I don't know how old she is, but she's been at it for a long time and still murders it. And you know what? I also noticed she's willing to work really, really hard.
Yeah, she, touring and playing live is her bag. That's her thing. And, just having met her just literally when we got started recently with rehearsals and the shows, and seeing her kind of ramping up, getting ready for the shows, she killed it. And, not to even say this in an ironic way, she's got a killer band playing with her. She's got a couple of Nashville session guys that she did an album with recently, and she said, you know what, I want you guys to tour with me doing these songs. And of all the bands that I've toured with through all my career, fantastic bands, her band really kills. They nail every one of her songs, every tiny inflection. I mean, they're just pros, and I was really amazed. So that was a really cool experience. You and I was going to try like crazy, to take even just an hour or so of time while I was doing that run with her, which was short. It was only 2.5-week run. And that was the other thing I learned about, or had to remind myself about touring. It's a brutal schedule. So we never really got to do it. And then just completely coincidentally, I wound up also mixing Smashmouth show in Vegas, basically the weekend of July 4th. So at least you and I got to physically hang out with each other.
Well, that was amazing. That was cool. Yeah, a little history for those that haven't maybe heard us talk about this on the show. And I don't know if we've ever talked specifically about Smashmouth, but the way Ray and I know each other was a bazillion years ago. I came to America from England because this band I was in England, where I grew grew up, got a record deal. Ray was working as a recording engineer in the studio where we made our record, and we were about to go on tour, and we needed to find a tour manager. And Ray was amazing with anything that had to do with audio. He was like the greatest guy in the world to be around. He was super easygoing and super reliable and everything. And at one point had driven a Boar's Head delivery truck. And so like getting ready to hit the road, we were just like, this guy checks literally all the boxes. Ray, you want to quit this job and come on the road with us? To which we got a resounding yes. I'll never forget, man. I will never forget. Like before we'd even played a show on our first ever tour, we were literally driving off into the sunset for some asinine reason. Whoever scheduled the thing, we were based in New York, and they're like, you know what? Let's start you in Portland. Okay, that's I think it was Portland. We got to drive across the country before we play a single show. So we were literally driving west into the sunset, and I was like, hey, this is pretty cool, isn't it, Ray? And you looked at me, you're like, I feel like I've found my calling. Cut to like years later, one of the biggest, most prolific tour managers in the game. So it was like a cool thing. But one of our formative experiences being on the road was playing with Smashmouth. We played like we were kind of like this screaming, vaguely punky, obnoxious rap metal band we were just, I don't know what the hell we were, but we were having a great time doing it. And one of the very first shows we ever played, we played Prince's Club in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We got a chance to open up for Smashmouth, who at the time had a huge hit, Walking on the Sun. And we were good enough that they asked us out on the road after that. So a big part of, my growing up was on the road with Smashmouth, with Ray. So to see you come to town and do a Smashmouth show, it was really something.
Yeah, I mean, literally our relationship with them started then, and I was able to maintain peripherally a really good close friendship with them all through these years, but not as an employee of theirs, not as a working with them. I just was literally tangent to everything as their buddy, and would go hang with them, would do all these kind of things. And it was only in the last couple of years that they actually asked me, hey, if you're available, could you come do some shows with us? And it really worked out. And so it was a big full circle for me just when I started doing that. And then now this having past weekend, having done that and having you to come out and everything was a lot of fun. And it was, it's definitely interesting and fun. And those guys, I mean, in a lot of senses, exactly what you were saying, their first single, so Walking on the Sun, hadn't come out at that point. It was just about to. It was being talked about as their first single. And you guys were just having your first single. And so literally at the time, two bands that had major label interest and backing were going to be now touring with the Third Eye Blind. And so basically Third Eye Blind had to make the decision about who would be considered direct support, like just before them, and who would be the opening act. And I think the word was that literally Jenkins and them listened to your guys' song, they listened to Smash Mouth's Walking on the Sun, which hadn't come out yet, and they said, you know what, that'll be the one. And that's why they were the direct support, and you guys were, we were the opening act. But that also set us in a totally different way, because at the time, tour support, etc., we were still in a van and trailer, literally following along with this entire bus and truck.
Yeah, that took some doing.
Yeah, it was crazy, and that was about a year. That was almost a year and a half straight of touring. It was a long time.
It was a long time on the road. I'm such a homebody now. It's like, to get me out of the house really takes some doing. But I used to be afraid of being off the road. I'm like, what am I gonna do? I don't know. I don't know what it was, but like for a while I could only sleep in a moving vehicle. Like I couldn't sleep. Like you guys used to make fun of me all the time because like the moment the vehicle hit, like the moment we were in motion, I just pulled the blanket up over my head, got my pillow, and I slept till the next town. It'd be amazing. I'd be like, hope I can sleep long enough to when accents are different when I get out. You know what I mean? Like it was like a weird thing. And so but like that would happen all the time. And the reason was I couldn't sleep at all. I'd get into the hotel room and I'd just lie there being like, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, F it. like, it's not going to work. I could only sleep on a moving vehicle just because I became so accustomed to being on the road. It was a strange thing. But, I have to tell you, like, I hadn't seen those guys in a very long time. And by the way, look, Smashmouth are a band that have sold a lot of records, have had a lot of really big hits. And, Smashmouth occasionally, like, I think don't necessarily get their due when it comes to musicianship. I was standing there by the side of the stage watching this show that you were sort of working, and I was just in awe. I was like, I forgot what incredible musicians they are. Like Paul, their bass player, is pound for pound one of the best bass players I have ever heard. Like they put on a really, really hot show.
Yeah. Yeah, they're solid. Mikey Klooster on keys. I mean, has literally been in the band that entire time. And so many definitive things of their hits are literally the keyboard-derived stuff, either studio or replicated live, obviously by him. So, like, he's the definitive parts of every one of their hits, and he kills it. And Randy Cook on drums, who's fantastic,
unbelievable drummer.
Yeah. So I mean, like, they're the kind of show that if you haven't seen them in a while, or you're just like, or you're one of the Shrek kids who are like, oh yeah, I remember that song from the movie, and now my kids watch Shrek. Like, that's what we get in the audience. You get tons and tons of parents who grew up as Shrek fans. And because the songs are so completely associated with that movie, who are now bring their kids to it, and I think they literally expect to see some 7-foot-tall green ogre jump around on stage, which Steve does the best he can. But okay.
Well, it was a little strange because I mean, when you were we'd hung out the night before, and that was great. And then there was a show which was in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of nowhere, like in the desert on a reservation. So when I say in the middle of nowhere, there was nothing for miles and miles around. And you're like, come to the show. I'm like, I saw you last night. I'm going to see you again. It was a great hang, like one of the best. And like, I've seen a lot of shows. Yeah, so I'm going to stay home. And then I had this moment where I remembered all the things that you and I just talked about, where I was like, wait a second, this band, this show, with Ray, this is how I grew up. This turned me like into an adult, almost, being on the road with these people, learning how to do all the things that went with being on the road. I remember, like, I started that tour having absolutely no idea what tax was. And then I was the one who was charged with, settling up with merch at the end of the night. So there I was adjusting for taxes and doing all this sort of stuff. And it really kind of like it was a growing learning experience that turned me into as close as I'm ever going to get to being an adult. And so I was like, wait a second, I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to see these guys play again. I haven't had a chance to see them play in a long time. And I haven't had a chance to see them play with Ray. And so I was just like, I have to do this. And so I drove out. The show is obviously amazing, but it was so strange because, get onto like Smashmouth's trailer backstage before the show, and like Steve, lead singer, is like, hey man, you all right? I was like, yeah, just tired. And I was tired, but I was also having a bit of a moment, like a surreal moment, because all of a sudden, like, I was a kid standing next to these people doing the same thing that we did all those years ago, about to watch like the same set. And it was a surreal kind of like, what is happening moment. And it was amazing. It was one of those moments that you don't get back. And I'm so glad that I did it, because it was a very special thing watching that show by the side of the stage with you in that way. It was like, I'm so glad you pressed the issue.
Yeah, no, it was totally cool, and I've got gigs coming up with them. I've got gigs coming up with Ann. So basically right now, in terms of logistics and advancing and getting things sorted and trying, from everything from hotel reservations to trucks to buses to local ground transportation to settlements to, it's all coming back now as, oh yeah, this is how we do shows, and it's been feeling like reinventing the wheel all over again. So it was definitely an interesting last couple of weeks. But during those last couple of weeks, I, of course, always am paying attention as all of us are, to what's going on with the Mets. And this has been an interesting 3 weeks or so of let's basically call it like the middle of June to now being here at the All-Star break. And where they were only a couple of weeks ago with an offense that was sputtering, that literally couldn't get out of its own way, could barely. I would not have been surprised if we got no hit 2 or 3 times in the span of just a couple of weeks. The way the offense was playing.
Well, like we started by saying, are the Mets good or not? I don't know, and the reason I say I don't know is because we will go from being completely dominant offensively one game to putting up a donut the very next day against the very same team, and it's just with the very same players, and it's so who the hell's to say? Look, we're 47-40, we're over 500 for I don't know how often we've been over 500 going 7 games over 500 before going into the All-Star break, but I feel like I don't feel like it's a big number over the last 5 years. Like we've had, no. And so we're really, we're really piecing together wins and we're doing well. But then there's, it's just so inconsistent. Like you put up literally dozens of runs against the Pittsburgh Pirates, as you should. Like, I love that they've got heart and grit and they're fighting, but they're a last place team. And the reason they're a last place team is because at this point, the Pittsburgh Pirates are almost like a quadruple A team. It's not even fair to call them Major League Baseball, but they've hit a hot streak recently. Like all of a sudden they're playing like, people that mean it. And they've got like, 2 All-Stars on the team, I think. So and the damage against us was done by Castro, the rookie, and then, they're 2 All-Star players. So, but like to go from one night putting up literally dozens of runs against them, and then the next day to blow a first inning 5-0 lead and lose and split the series. Like, I'm very happy we're in first place. I'm very happy we're 7 games over 500. Hand on my heart, I don't know if we're good. Like, I just don't know.
I would say, and I would remind you or anybody else to not be satisfied with middling. To me, 500 ball is you're as good as you are bad. It's so we've been playing 500 ball now basically for the last month. So that's treading water, and there's been the obvious issues and the obvious things we've been dealing with, and the things that have made us successful over this amount of time are still the things that are holding on to us. The pitching has done well. Our bench mob has literally carried the day, and we're all just kind of still waiting for things to come back around. I mean, Conforto hit a home run today. It was such a sigh of relief of like, oh yeah, that guy can hit home runs. Oh, but he hasn't.
He hasn't. We're getting all these people off the IL, and you can't expect people to come off the IL and be amazing. Like they haven't played baseball in a while. But it is worrying, seeing people like Conforto and McNeil struggle. But then, like Polar Pete comes back off of the IL. It was like AAA, nah. Let me see. Yeah, crank, home run, crank, home run. Like he's been inconsistent, but he's been looking like the polar bear. And then Nimmo coming back, and he's just he's the spark plug. He's gotten things moving. He is. I really love Nimmo because he's the nicest guy on the face of the planet. But like he plays the kind of aggressive ball that I think we wish every single one of the Mets plays. Like you hear him talk about it. He's like, it's my job to be causing chaos, to keep the opposition on their toes. I think that's why he sprints to first base whenever he walks. And stops for a quick little prayer when he hits the bag. Like I think he just does. Like not only is he appreciative, enthusiastic, but I also think he's kind of putting them off kilter with him going, why is this guy running? I don't know. Does he know something I don't? Am I paying attention?
And we literally mentioned this several weeks ago, or several podcasts previous, of the fact that players get typecast into certain things. He's typecast as quote unquote a fourth outfielder technically, or would be better off.
Not after that flying catch the other day. Right. Not after that Barishnikov pranced through the air. That you couldn't have that was a thing of beauty. That has to get him into the Gold Glove conversation.
Well, that makes him like literally in the conversation of like, had we signed Springer, would we have been any better off?
Yeah.
The fact that both of them were injured for quite a while. Springer, I believe, is just starting to maybe come back for Toronto, but hasn't played particularly well. Nimmo is a total spark plug. In the lineup as well as in the outfield. The switching around that we did with Almora out there, who had tiny flashes of things, but there was, I believe, Almora was sent down this week.
He was, yeah.
They had to make room. It's kind of like who's hot, who's not. In terms of these different positions.
Well, you called it in the offseason when your battle cry when we were trying to get players was depth. Don't give up any prospects. Just collect players like Pokemon cards. We are going to need them. And boy, have we needed them. And, honestly, like, had we not had that depth, and it's funny, we've gotten to the point where it's such a rotating cast of characters, and the bench mob is, sort of like its own entity. And I think that someone like Almora getting sent down, I think he's probably fine. He's not, I don't think anyone's ever fine with it, but he knows he'll be back. He knows that, Rojas has to make all these changes, on the fly just to patch together something that's going to get wins.
Yeah. Or something parallel that's going on right now is obviously we're approaching the trade deadline, and we are without a doubt the type of team that would be a buyer and looking for pieces and parts that we would need to make this now half a season run towards the playoffs. And the teams that you're looking at, like say the Chicago Cubs, who have gone on an epic losing streak to kind of take them out of contention, where 2 weeks ago they were in contention. 2 weeks later, approaching the All-Star game now, they are in a definitely seller mode.
Everyone knows the Cubs are going to be sellers. They were like trumpeting from that, but what's the super tall? Is it the Sears Tower? What's the tall building in Chicago? Yeah, they were trumpeting it from the top of the Sears Tower, like, we are going to be selling off pieces. Their names may or may not rhyme with Schmyant.
Right.
Like,
now, and that becomes, I think, the biggest thing that the Mets really, really have to consider and look at. If say a player that rhymes with Schmyant is available, but he's a total rental. That there's no locking him in for anything. It's just literally he's playing well. You're gonna pick him up for the rest of the season, and do not, as much as you possibly can, lose your top 10 prospects to a team on a rental.
I say, here's what I say. I say ixnay on Bryant, and I'll tell you why. Like, they were talking about it today on the broadcast. Like, here comes Castro. What is his name? Rodolfo Castro, I think. The infielder. We've had it. He's showing off defensively, and he's hitting home runs like you wouldn't believe. And let's face it, Uncle Steve has deep pockets, and the Pittsburgh Pirates need money. Like, everyone, like the talk was like, oh man, when eventually the Cubs do trade Bryant, like obviously Castro would make a great third baseman for the Cubs. No. Castro would make a great third baseman for the Mets, maybe, possibly. I mean, it's a really small sample size because he's a rookie and he's barely ever played, but he has just been so impressive, and it's a chance to get him for cheap. Like, do that. Get that guy. There he is hitting bombs off of us, and and causing us to blow a 5-run lead. Like, that's one of those players where you're like, damn it, we can't beat him. Can we buy him? Yeah.
Well, rewinding again to the beginning of this, and a lot of what I was kind of talking about and hoping is that, Steve Cohen's money is a commodity that I would hope could be used more than players' bodies. And even in I'll use a perfect example, I think, in this scenario. JD Davis he's an enigma in terms of, everybody knows what his bat is. We totally know that. He's been maligned over and over again about what his glove is like at third, but he does have flexibility. He's played left field. He's played around. So in terms of our depth, when we get these players back, and we're now playing almost on our regular squad, does a JD Davis off the bench make so much more sense to us with a Guillaume at third, or does a Bryant, who is he's a renowned third baseman? He's excellent.
No, that's what he like with Bryant. You get a third baseman. That's what you get. None of this messing around and putting him in the outfield.
But in our farm right now, there's at least 3 guys that are bona fide great prospects at the either third or short, that left side of the infield. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't want to give up on Vientos or Batty or any of them, because sure, right now they're shown as being a shortstop, and Lindor is going to be blocking guys up forever. Mm-hmm. But I want to see what these guys can do in other spots. Brett Batty just got promoted very rapidly up to double A ball. I don't want to see our future go away again, and I'd much rather think of our future, our successful future, with Mets farmhands.
You know what I do not understand, and I'm sure there's a reason for it, or they would have done it. Like, I don't understand why Dom Smith hasn't taken a turn at third. Like, his natural position is first base, and a couple of starts that he got at first base, we saw it in action this season. Like, he has come on in leaps and bounds as a defensive outfielder. He's one of those guys where you do what it takes to get his bat in the lineup. But I'm looking at what he does at first base and thinking, like, the guy is clearly a very good defensive infielder. Why would we not try? Like, why are you putting him in the outfield? Why would you not put him at third if he can play first? And I actually Googled it. I was like, do first basemen make really bad third basemen? Because I can't, like, I was like, am I an idiot here? Am I stepping out of some sort of like intellectually dwarfed baseball closet that I don't understand why? I was like, it seemed like such a no-brainer to me, and they haven't tried it. And I just like, he's good in the outfield, and he's getting really good. Like, he's made a couple of incredible catches, like that one where he just sort of hopped up on the barrier and sat there and caught the ball in the stands. It was amazing. But I was just like, it's got to be a natural fit for him at third. Am I stupid? Is there a reason why they haven't done this?
No, I don't think so. Or maybe it would have been something in spring training you kind of really want to get a feel for more than being dropped into the deep edge of the pool for that. But think about it with our depth. I mean, between Villar, and his abilities, Pilar in the outfield, and how he's been really contributing that way. So we've got depth all around in these positions. We've obviously. There's decisions in the offseason that need to be made. Whether Conforto's given a qualifying offer and he takes it because his stock has taken quite a hit on what he's been doing this year and being injured. Yeah,
he had a small sample size before getting injured, and it wasn't good. And then he's been he hit a bomb obviously today, and that was great. But I wonder what Conforto. Conforto, I think, is a level-headed enough guy to where he's just focusing on what's in front of him and doing the best he can with that. I wonder what his agent Boris is thinking with, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do to get top dollar out of this kid? He's been sick. Well, he's been hurt, and and then he hasn't exactly been murdering it on the field, or like murdering it at the plate.
Do other teams look at Conforto and say, oh, on what he's done in the past, I'm going to give him $120 million 5-year deal of some kind? Or are they like, I need to see a little bit more? So the Mets offering him a qualifying offer in this offseason of saying, listen, come back for us for a 1-year deal for 18 or 19 million a year. Or even the fact of like dangling that with him, or to say, hey, Michael, here's a 3-year deal. Here's a $70 million 3 or 4 year deal of get yourself back in condition and do it with us. Like if he really loves the Mets, or if he really loves New York, and he's a lifer, mentioned many times of being like captain of the team kind of level guy. If I was him, I would completely be saying, this is the place to be. I think Stroman's going to do the same thing. I don't think Stroman's going to test the free
agency
waters.
market. No,
yeah, I think he's going to tell him, like, listen, I like being here. You guys like me. I like you. Let's just do this.
Yeah, I could see that. Like I think, I don't know. It's one of those things, like you can never know until you're there. And I would never want to be there because I would destroy the magic getting too close to it. Even if we got an opportunity to like hang with the Mets, I wouldn't want to do it. But from the outside looking in, it looks as though the culture they have there is not just good, but special. Like they really, really seem to, do all the, that whole thing where they have, after every win, they have a locker room dance party and make sure they celebrate just to create sort of like a vibe and an atmosphere, and to make sure that the people who contributed are recognized. They really seem to like each other, and also, there's got to be a certain intrinsic high of being in first place, unless you're someone who's like, I don't know if this team really has a use for me. I can't imagine wanting to walk away from a team that's in first with a bunch of guys that really seems to like playing together.
Yeah, I think you're right. The culture of the Mets throughout our history has been, one, having to deal with being second fiddle in New York City, even when they were good, when they were up and the Yankees were down, you were still kind of dealing with that in a way. But there was also always the drama of it being New York, and there were certain players who couldn't handle New York. They just couldn't. There are Hall of Famer level players that came here and couldn't get it done here for whatever particular reason, and I would completely believe that it has a lot to do with being able to, whether they can do it on the big stage or not. Mm-hmm. So what they've got right now, the combination of our young youth that we've developed and have, which I really, really like. Mm-hmm. I look across our whole team, and I wouldn't want to be as just cutthroat as to say you stick around, you forget it, you're gone. I really, really like our team. I like our players. There's a couple of them that if they weren't going to be raising their game up enough, that's where it would kind of be maybe put to them of like, if you can't raise your game and you don't necessarily say want to be here, we're not going to even entertain giving you an extension or anything like that. I think the generating of that culture is that important. So I'll give you another, for instance. I think Thor so completely belongs here that regardless of the fact of what he's going through right now and hasn't thrown a pitch, I would expect and want the Mets to give him an extension, to say, you know what, we believe in you. You've done so much for us in the past. We want you to do more in the future of us. So how about we reach a reasonable, contract right now of going forward to see how things go, because he's still a ways away necessarily of being the old Thor. So like that. I don't know. That to me is I don't know
if the old Thor's ever coming back. I don't know if you're ever going to get that, like that breaking 100. I don't know if you're ever going to get that 98-mile slider guy back again, because he was that super throw it through the brick wall guy, and I think he is. But I think yes, he's coming off of surgery and he's coming off of the injury in the previous season. But also, like, he's not a dumb guy. Like, I remember very early on, he was talking about Bartolo Colon and what it was to, be on a team with him and watch this guy who is, beating the crap out of his 40s, performing the way he was, and realizing that he went from being a power pitcher to being, to being someone who's finesse. Long on strategy and finesse. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember him being like, he was like, big sexy is my Yoda. So I think he's caught cognizant of the fact that, he's been around someone who managed to have a very long career and perform at a very high level late into it, to the point where I think, he's got to see. But then also, him and DeGrom sort of like, came up within the Mets organization at the same time. And to see someone like DeGrom, who is, probably, they're both enormously tall, but like to see someone who like DeGrom, who's like this kind of beanpole of a guy doing 102, he's got to, I wonder if he's sort of thinking like, how does he get to be 102 without being humongous like me?
Well, you want to know what? So one other thing that happened quite coincidentally today is that they for the first time decided to combine the draft process with the All-Star break. And I happen to be someone who, as huge of a baseball fan as I am, I kind of never really paid that much attention to the draft, as in like literally being in on it and wanting to see.
I'll go one better than that. I didn't really pay attention to the All-Star break. I'll watch the game, but baseball is such an immersive thing. It's like 162 games, and if you're like me and Ray, you are there for every pitch of it. If you're not physically watching it, we're always keeping track. We're always monitoring. The people that came up with all the functionality behind the MLB app, it works. It brought me back into being 100% invested in baseball after kind of a break of not being able to follow it the way I would have liked to. So the All-Star break is kind of like maybe I'll watch an episode of Seinfeld or something. I can watch something other than baseball, so it's it's meaningless. And if something amazing happens, I'll see it on the internet 5 seconds later,
Well, where I was going with that is the fact that today the Mets, in the draft, their 10th pick, in the first round,
I know where you're going.
A fantastic college pitcher that basically could have maybe gone 1 or 2 in the draft, had his ups and downs, but still a pretty consistent good success, and he kind of slid down the draft to where he was available. He's a pitcher that we could literally see him by next year. Mm-hmm. He's a college pitcher, so it's not like he's been in what would be determined to be an equivalent of the minor leagues with success. I got no issues or problems. Hey, Dwight Gooden debuted at 19 years old. Mm-hmm. I got no problems if a guy is blowing it up at that level. Bring him in. So our pitching going forward for say next year, albeit the CBA and being renegotiated and all the crap that can come out of that, it's such a positive thing to think of that, say they re-sign Stroman because he wants to be here. They extend Thor and say, here, give us what you got. Show us what you got. You got DeGrom right in the middle of his his abilities and where he is. Carrasco, we're gonna see Carrasco very soon. Mm-hmm. Say we get Rocker, and Rocker's comes in as just like Peterson did as a 4 or 5, and we're kind of okay. Today what I learned from this loss to the Pirates is that I thought that I could accept a bullpen game in terms of every once in a while, okay, we don't have a starter.
You thought you could accept it because we managed to put together wins out of it. Today, when it costs us a game and some serious humiliation, it doesn't look as appealing.
No, it really doesn't. And the mere fact of having a starter who's going to go, let's call it 5 or 6 innings and hand it off, and having a pen that's all rested and sharp, or their abilities are right on, or you have a Castro who's just not doing it very well right now. You don't have to press him harder than he needs to be.
Yeah,
all of those elements are things that amount to having depth that works.
Do you think? I don't know why I'm whispering. I feel like I should.
I think a lot.
Do you think that there are any pitchers on the Mets pitching staff who have been adversely affected by the crackdown on sticky stuff?
That's a very loaded question.
It is.
Which I'm going to get close up to the mic right now to say that I wouldn't want to make direct accusations to anyone. But what I would love to think is that baseball could get its head out of its own ass and figure out a different way than literally dehumanizing a man on a field, making him can we figure out a better way to to see if someone's using or cheating or something than literally depantsing a man on the field after he just had either a nice a nice inning or something. I just don't like how it's being handled.
There's gotta be a more discreet, respectful way to do that than being okay, bend over, spread them on the middle of a baseball diamond in front of 40,000 people.
That being said, the mere fact that since they had this quote unquote crackdown, there were a couple of pitchers that all of a sudden, hey, guy just doesn't seem to have as much control as he was having.
Well, but that is the argument for the sticky stuff that batters like Pete Alonso have been very vocal about. They're like, these guys are throwing 99 miles an hour right at me with a little white ball. Like that, small surface area means greater impact if and when it hits you. I am 100% okay with them using whatever it takes to keep control of that, because there has been Jerry Blevins, I think he even wrote an article on it for the New York Post or someone, but he wrote a rather insightful article on it being hey, basically we all use sunscreen and rosin because the balls you get, they're fresh, they're white, it's impossible to get a grip on them, you're sweating like you wouldn't believe. You do need something to help you control what's going on. He was but we can't have nice things because everybody ruins it for everyone by coming in with spider tack and recognizing what spin rate can do to your career and your contract negotiation. So it's
Adrian, that's a very sticky wicket. I must say, what?
I say, it's a bit of it's not cricket.
Quite a bit of a sticky wicket. What?
Yes, it's not.
No,
cricket.
but you know what? When they outlawed the spitball back in the days, they literally grandfathered in the guys that were still using it because they were okay, these guys can still do it for all. That's a ridiculous argument.
You've been openly cheating for the last 5 years. Well, you're free to do it to the end of your career, but you, not so much. It's just, I
mean, the difference in pitching now of what, the spin rates and sliders that are, literally traveling sideways and curveballs that drop off the edge of a table. And, that's the game. That's the pitching. And as much as this game's now become a 99, 100 plus, pitching system, the control aspect and the change of speeds aspect is still the most determinative part of successful pitching. A pitcher like Thor, where he was throwing his fastball in the high 99, 100 range, but he would throw his slider at 90 miles an hour, and it cut like a knife. That was his determinative pitch. If guys are gonna throw changeups that are 10 to 15 miles per hour less than what their fastball is, and they're going to throw them in situations where maybe it's not necessarily thought of. That's how pitchers pitch. That's the difference between throwing and pitching, and that's exactly what Thor was saying about Big Sexy in terms of him, what he does and how he throws. It's his control and his ability to pitch around and change angles, change speeds, change directions.
Yeah,
that's pitching.
That's pitching, and it's very interesting because he's playing in some league somewhere, but he was he's playing in Mexico. But I saw when he was still sort of I think under the impression that he might play Major League Baseball this season in America, he was floating clips of him pitching on the internet, and I don't know if there was a gun on it, but the velocity looks like what you would expect from him, and I don't know anything. I'm certainly not a scout. I don't understand how some people can pick this stuff out from a distance. But to me, his location looked flawless. It looked like he was, the ball was going exactly where he wanted it to go when he wanted it to go there. In the footage I saw of Bartolo, yeah, amazing to me. Like, as an out of market fan, like, I feel lost when I go to a game now. Like, I love it. I love the atmosphere, but I miss hearing Gary, Keith, and Ron in my ear, letting me know what's going on. Like, and I think we've all tried to do that, where we miss it and we're just like, we put an earphone on and then realize that the game on, your app is like 30 seconds behind or whatever it is. But like, it always amazes me, and like, it makes me feel like an idiot baseball fan, because when I'm watching on TV, you can see if a pitch is close. You can see, when the ump calls something, you're like, come on, man. Like, that's ridiculous. Or, ooh, that was a close one. Like, you can hear 40,000 people go, ooh, when it's close. I'm like, how can you tell that from the stands? Like, the ball went so fast. You're half a mile away. How are you aware that that was a close pitch? But they are. Like, it's amazing to me. This has nothing to do with anything, but I was just like thinking about close pitches and location, and like, how do people that are there, like, when I'm there, I'm just excited to be there. I don't know what's happening, really, at least when it comes to, how, unless I've got amazing seats, I don't know how close to being on or off the plate a pitch was. Can you tell when you're at a game?
It totally depends on where you're sitting. If you're sitting behind first base or third base, so you're literally watching from the side, it's incredibly unfair to think that you can see from that angle whether it was just off the plate or not. You certainly can see high or low. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that you could probably determine from that angle. But you're right. I mean, it's become such a precise, like inch by inch or micro inch kind of thing that the TV broadcast is a huge help. Mm-hmm. The umpiring and replay situation is something that baseball definitely needs to address, because it's just not handled incredibly well. I have not heard yet reports from the minors and everything about with their attempts at trying
the robot umpires in the Atlantic League. Is it?
Yeah. I haven't heard enough of a determinative report back of like, this is what the accuracy rate has been determined to be, or is there still an umpire standing behind home plate? Could he override that if he literally said, no, wait a second, I don't care what the computer says, that pitch was low? Like, I don't know how that all really works out. You know what, if you got two strikes on you, shorten up your swing and protect the plate. If you're in a 3-2 count and the pitch is close, you got a lot of balls to take a pitch that close, and that's the history of the game. That's the legitimacy of the game. There's players who are literally renowned for their abilities to hit in two-strike situations. Keith Hernandez, in particular, was known for his ability to hit in two-strike situations because he shortened up, he closed up his vision of the strike zone, and literally said, you know what, if it's anywhere near this circle that I'm looking at, I've got to defend the plate. And he fell off a bunch of pitches on a 3-2 count. Not even necessarily something that he thought he would be able to drive or put where he was going to put it or go with the pitch or anything. But he'd foul off several things before he would get it, and that's the ability to be able to close up when you got two strikes. So the be all circle around of what I was just saying for all that is just that the pitchers have, I think, a very, very strong ability right now in terms of their movement of the pitches. I watch a lot of guys batting, and I think there's a reason why the league batting average is 230 average right now. Just as a whole. I
asked a question on Twitter. Had anybody figured out this year's batting averages graded on a curve. Like if you were hitting 230 this year, what would that be last year? Or what would that be in a year that they hadn't deadened the ball? You know, like what that, you know, like obviously, you know, there's all this talk of, you know, batting averages are super low. And it's so funny because I still don't understand. It's so frustrating because like, well, you know, too many home runs. We're going to deaden the ball. And you see so many home run balls die on the warning track now. It's like, it's unreal. And I don't have hard figures to support that, but I feel like there's so many things that would have been a bomb last year that were not this year. And I think that was what they were trying to address with the deadening of the ball, where they're like, okay, we're going to deaden the ball and make it harder to hit out of the park. And then, you know, now they're like, oh, nobody seems to be able to hit them out of the park anymore. Let's move the pitcher's mound. Like, or just put the ball back the way it was, you idiots. Like, it's just like, you know, like, we're like, we made one change. Let's make another stupid change. Let's mess with the heritage and the fabric of the game. Let's take that thing that's America's pastime and screw with it a little bit for the sake of some ratings. No, get it right. Leave it the way it was. Fine, jerks.
Well, then caveat emptor for this next year when the CBA has to be renegotiated by two opposing parts of the same thing that have to somehow come up with agreements on how they're going to do things and yet still look like they actually care about the game, because Major League Baseball and the Players Association like can't get their crap together of saying we're the stewards of this game. We like there are certain things that like we should just do to make this literally better for the players, better for the fans, everything like that. I tweeted a couple of days ago, especially approaching this All-Star game, that I'm still a huge advocate of taking the season and going back to 154 game season, because 160 games is a very long season. Yes, it is. But if they went back to 154 games, if they made the All-Star break a 7-day, a week-long break, like right now, if this was the All-Star break and we had 7 days, maybe a Jacob DeGrom, who is the best pitcher in baseball, would say, you know what, I will come and I'll throw an inning or so, because I do have enough time where I can do that. I can take a break from the game. I can see my family before I got to go back into the grind again. Players and teams that have players that like, you know, legitimately need like a rest, instead of making this like a very short, like so concise, like kind of time frame on the All-Star game, make it a week-long thing and, you know, everybody chill and relax. And at the end of the season, now take your playoffs and make the wild card series a 3-game series. You made it to the wild card, fantastic. It's a 3-game series. You make it the division series, make that a 7-game series.
I 100% agree. Like the sudden death situation in the postseason, that's not how baseball works. You know, like
it's football.
I'm not a big believer in that. Mostly because we were on the wrong end of that in 2016 in a very painful and obvious way. But
you don't score a run. You don't score a run, you can't win. I think that's in the rule books.
Somewhere it says that.
Somewhere it says if you don't score a run, you ain't gonna win.
Well, how did that wild card game end? Was it 1-0? Like 1-0. Yeah. Like Thor let go one. Thor gave up 1 run, and Mad Bum gave up 0. That was a true pitcher's duel.
Yeah, we didn't score a damn run, and you can't win a game if you can't score a damn run.
No, but as the Mets have proven time and time again, you can win a series if you don't score a run in one of those games. Because, 0 one day, 22 the next, against the same team, because that makes sense.
All right, you're hitting me with all your legal mumbo-jumbo, so I'm going to have to go
one thing, as we do go into the All-Star break, and you might still be on the fence about this, but I have made up my mind about. I still don't know if the Mets are good. I genuinely don't. Like, I have hope. I love the Mets. I love watching them play. I think this first half of the season, I remember in the past Thor tweeting don't worry, everybody, we're a second half team, and they have been. And if we're a second half team and this was our first half, wow. Like, it's just like obviously, there's going to be parts of every single baseball season that are completely heartbreaking, but I've really, really enjoyed what I have seen so far. Like I said, I still don't know if we're good, but one thing I have made up my mind about is that I like Luis Rojas. There are decisions he's made that I have questioned. There are things that he has done that have had me screaming at my television set. There have been all sorts of stuff that he's done that I didn't like. But when you look at the body of work that's gone into everything up until the All-Star break, I like how he literally goes to bat for his players. I like how he jaws at home plate umpires. I like how he's aggressive. I like how he seems to have built a culture. I like how he's been able to MacGyver a winning record together out of spare parts. And I think, honestly, having the everyday players back has kind of hurt him a little bit because, hey, Conforto's finding his thing. Like, in a different situation, be like, yeah, the guy who happens to be in right field today isn't hitting. Let's get somebody else there. And you can't do that with Conforto. Like, he's a bit of a golden child. So I think he probably, coming from the minor leagues, does better managing when he has the latitude to mess with the program a little bit more. But I've made a decision, and I'm not expecting you to adhere to it, but I like Luis Rojas. There, I said it.
Well, I'm going to give you a couple of other key points about just everything that you just said from my perspective. First of all, as a Mets fan forever, I can tell you definitively that our seasons have been determined most in our history by how we've performed in June and how we've performed in August. Mm-hmm. Those have been, and I'm not saying that our record in July hasn't been makes a difference, and so the September run to the end doesn't make a difference. No, what's literally happened in our history is that if we've had a bad June and a bad August, it kind of has manipulated itself into when we haven't been good. So I always kind of really watch, how did we do in June? How do we do in August? June, we just played 500 baseball. That to me is not a winning record. That's not a losing record, but that's certainly not a dominant record. So I really want to see what the Mets now do coming out of the All-Star break, and I want to see them have a strong August. I want their record in August to literally be like 19-7, or something, something along those percentage lines where percentage-wise they have a really, really strong August. In terms of Luis, I gotta admit, I do like him. I like his relationship with the players. I don't think that's necessarily any bad things. What I do question is his bullpen management, his management of the pitching, both starting and relief, I think is suspect, and I think it's something that he could totally work on. I'm not saying fire him because he can't do this, but I am telling you, coming into September and say we do make the playoffs, the decisions I see him make in terms of bullpen decisions, et cetera, like that, a lot of those are decisions I think costs us a big game in the playoffs that we needed or anything. I would, the way that he's managing right now in terms of the way he manages the pitching, I'd be a little bit afraid of what he would be in a short series in the playoffs where it's win. Mm-hmm. And that's just a criticism of mine of saying I'd love him to learn a bit more and learn a bit more about how to handle that, because I agree with you. I like him. I like his relationship with the players. I think they play well for him. Mm-hmm. I certainly think he's got a good balance. He doesn't get all hot-headed and crazy or like that, but he does stand up when he has to. Those things are admirable.
He's very calm. He's very calm, but it's not at the expense of having a spine. It's not at the expense of having an edge and a backbone. It's not at the expense of having fight in him. So no,
but his there's a lot of questions to be asked about his management of the pitching staff.
Yeah,
that to me is a question.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right on that one. I think I'm always in two minds about this because we've talked about this numerous times on the podcast before. That is probably the toughest decision a manager has to make, and the one that they're going to be judged most harshly on when it goes wrong, and the one that they are going to be those are the decisions that people remember, when you didn't leave the guy in and the relief pitcher gave up a home run. When you didn't recognize that your starter was gassed and they were gassed, or when you didn't let them go the extra inning they were capable of going, or or everybody thinks they were like, that is the toughest decision a manager has to make. And also, Luis Rojas has not been playing with a full deck. He's been trying to string things together. So there are times where I see it, I'm just like, why would you do that? Why, Louis? Why? You're killing me. You're killing independent AD.
Today, with the way Castro's been throwing, and you got a good inning out of him, and Drew Smith is sitting there all pumped and ready to go. If it's a bullpen game, okay, bullpen the crap out of it. Familia came in and did what he had to do. Castro came in and did what he had to do, and then he asked way too much of him, and then he asked way too much of Edwin, to come in, and Edwin, basically blew it. And he had to go to Drew, and he had to go to Drew later than he had. So it's just if you manage from a dominating position of I'm going to shut you guys down. If you haven't scored enough runs by the 6th inning, there's no way you're going to beat us. That is a dominant feeling of going into, say, a playoffs, because
that is what it should have been today. We put up 5 in the first inning. You're done. You're toast. You aren't getting these back.
Championship teams find a way, and their records that say if they have a lead after the 6th inning, it's this percentage. If they have a lead after the 7th or 8th inning, they win this many games. If you have a lead going into the 9th, your closer your percentage of wins is this much. For instance, the Yankees had that with Rivera. So these games, the 5-run lead that they got themselves in the first inning, one that should have not been the only things they could have scored, because they did come up in several key situations. Lindor did great. Lindor was on base every single time. He had he walked.
I have high hopes for Lindor's second half. I think as we all do, but it's so funny because everyone's been looking for that big breakthrough moment where oh man, he's gonna break loose, and I just think he's been quietly creeping up in. I don't know. Who knows what it was? Who knows why he couldn't get the barrel to the ball? We don't know. That's the 300. That's literally the $341 million question. But who knows why he couldn't? But I feel like he's working his way back, and he's been great. He's been the kind of player that in the last week or so, he's been the kind of player, even without the grand slam, the kind of player that you thought we purchased.
And he's getting used to New York. It does take time. It does take, it takes the right person, and it takes a little time getting used to it. I think he loves the Klieg lights. I think he loves the Broadway aspect of it. And I think anybody who thinks that he's going to hit 400 and 60 home runs and steal 80 bases and let's be realistic. Lindor and his lifetime stats are that of a very good player, right? Very, very good, with great defensive skills, so that he really, really brings it on both sides. But, if you're expecting him to come up with the biggest hit of all time every time, he isn't necessarily that player. But he's certainly a great cog, and he's a great leader on the field, which I always respect. Yeah. I love and respect leaders on the field who are there in every single pitch. He's he's a catcher playing shortstop, because he's involved in every single pitch. Yep. So it's great. And whether the players that we have maybe that we'll pick up in this offseason in our buying mode, I hope to God that we're more buying or picking up pitchers than necessarily any more hitting, etc. I think our hitting will come around. I think if a Chris Bryant was going to come here, if it doesn't make sense for us and it doesn't make sense for the Cubs, then screw it. I don't care if he comes. We can make do. I want pitching.
Yeah, and also, let's be brutally honest here. Being dead last in terms of offense, what's gotten us, to be 7 games over 500 in the first half has been the pitching. So don't let that go. It's just like, it's stupid. We shouldn't be able to, but clearly we can put together wins without the bats going the way they should. We cannot lose pitching. We can't not have a backup for Castro if the Castro magic goes away in the second half. We need to and it really does come down, I think, probably to the pen, because you're gonna get Thor back, you're gonna get Cookie back, back. He's never played a game as a Met, but you're going to get him off of the IL. You're going to get some really, really solid starting pitching back, and then the question becomes we can't have pen meltdowns. We just can't. We can't look. I mean, obviously. Diaz, has been about as sugary sweet as you can get when there isn't in a non-save in a save situation. He's been unbelievable. But I think it's pretty clear that you can't overuse that guy. And I
You're
think
totally right.
I think he had 3 out. He was asked to get 5 outs today, and he got 4. Right? Am I making that up?
Yeah. You're exactly right.
Yeah, and and because he couldn't get the 5th, when he's accustomed to getting 3, because he couldn't get the 5th, we lost the game, and that can't happen. We can't all the planets, the stars, the culture of the team, everything that needed to happen for him to find his footing in New York City has happened, and he has been that dominant lights out guy that we just wished we had, but we can't overtax him. So we cannot. I would be 100% all in on doing anything to shore up our pen, because we've got the starting pitching coming back off the IL. Fingers crossed.
And you know what? To put a bow on this entire episode and to go on the record of saying it, I literally want to go on the record of saying I don't understand anybody who rejoiced in watching Ronald Acuna for the Braves get hurt or be taken out of being able to play for the rest of the season.
To anybody that says that makes me happy as a Met fan, you're a dick.
Yeah, I want to play the Braves at their best and our best. I want to play the Phillies at their best and our best. I want to play the Marlins at their best and our best. I saw a whole lot of things that really disheartened me. And maybe they were just raw emotion kind of reactions to it. But you know what? That really is just horrible. So and that was a shame. So like I said, to put a bow on this episode, as much as I can't stand the Braves, I feel horrible for them having lost a guy like that for the rest of the season. And I hope that he recovers and has a fantastic career with the Mets.
It's very good. Very good. It's so funny because when we all got a billion alerts on Twitter, on the ESPN app, on the MLB app, on all the ways you can follow baseball. You've carted off the field in tears, probably a season ender, and then when I saw that it was specifically a complete tear of the ACL, the first thing I thought was the number of club security guards that could have been football players that Ray talks about knowing because of that specific injury. I was going to have to never work a real job ever again. I was just going to play professional football, and then I tore my ACL, and now my job is tossing drunk people out of this arena. It's just so that's something that it's not just season ending, but depending on how well you do or do not recover from it, I don't want to say career ending, because that's a horrible thing to say, but it could really, really, the game needs stars, and we never like it when someone like that is destroying us, but he's a star, and he's an easy to like. He's one of those guys who are damn, he's so good. Why do I like him? Keep your Schadenfreude
to yourself. And just accept. Embrace the great players in other teams, and because you don't have a league unless the other teams are good. So I was, like I said, I wanted to just put that as the tail end of everything of just like, come on, just please, just be reasonable and realistic about other teams, and I really hope everything works out for him.
Yeah, fingers crossed for him. Hey, well, we're gonna finish up, but like, what have you been cooking recently? Like, so you didn't cook when you were on the road because you can't. I'm guessing you missed it. Did you cook up a storm when you got home, or were you just like out of the groove?
God, I totally missed it. And like I came home and even asked the wife. I'm like, what are we gonna eat? What are we gonna do? And yesterday was my birthday, so we
happy birthday.
We didn't cook. We didn't cook. We went out for my favorite meal. My favorite food in the world is sushi. In every abstraction of it. Like I like all like wacky exhibition kind of stuff. So we went for some really cool stuff. I haven't cooked like because of being on the road and just getting back here. I haven't cooked more than just basically, eggs for breakfast and kind of neutral stuff. So you would be. I saw for July 4th a picture of you doing a complete layout. So like this would be way more of a question for you of what you cooked, because I haven't really cooked at all.
Well, it's funny you should say that. It looked good, like the picture, and it was delicious. But like, I actually decided to make life simple on the 4th of July because usually when I'm doing something, it's kind of a project because I want to learn something new. I want to pick up a new skill. I want to try something I haven't tried out before. I want to perfect something that I'm working on. But this time I was like, I just want to make it easy. I like burgers and dogs. So like, and the one thing that I've made burgers in the past, but I've never done it where it's just like meat, grill, pow. That's it. Like, it's always like, oh, here's a little breadcrumb and egg. And this is what's going to, and I was like, I want to see if it's just possible to like, here's a third of a pound of beef. I'm going to add fire and see how it tastes. And that was for the most part what I did. It was great. I used 85-15 beef to, or lean to fat content that seemed to hold together very nicely on the grill. A third of a pound seems to be the way to go. It allows you to have a good char on the outside and a good sort of pink bit on the inside. But the one thing I did do that I'd never succeeded at before was I made a Juicy Lucy. You ever made one of those?
Oh God, yeah. My mother-in-law has a fantastic Juicy Lucy.
To those that don't know, Juicy Lucy is the hamburger equivalent of a stuffed crust pizza. It's melted cheese inside the hamburger, and I tried to do it,
which makes total sense. I mean, let's just talk about like science. That just makes total sense.
It really does. It's so unbelievably delicious, and it's exactly what you want. And I tried it before and failed, and the reason I'd failed was because I did not consult a recipe book. I'm just like, and it just fell apart. And I remember I made them in a pan. I was like, I guess I got scrambled. Like I gave up and added an egg to it and scrambled it together. I was just like, this is dinner now. Like,
well, you made hash. That's perfect.
It was delicious, but it wasn't what I was going for. I was looking for something that you can put in a bun, not something that you cobble together with a spoon. But like the fact that you have to freeze the cheese first was lost on me. So yeah, it was basically
but that's technique. That is literally more like chefs sharing their techniques of like, this works really well. Someone who's just doing it straight out of the box wouldn't necessarily know to do that, but an experienced person would say, you know what, because of the melting factor and how the heat works and how you're still cooking you still have to cook the meat to a temperature that is actually cooked, but you don't want it melting out. That's just technique.
It really was, so if you've never tried it before, look up a recipe, but essentially you're going to freeze the cheese, so make sure you've got frozen cheese before you go to put your burgers on the grill. But yeah, it's cheese for, if you haven't cottoned on to this yet, it's cheese melted inside a burger. And what I love about it is that you still get cheese and burger, which is obviously a heavenly combination. But you don't have that layer of cheese getting in the way of the char. So you've got the ooey gooey melted cheese. You got the char on the top of the burger. If you toast the buns, you've got you've got sort of char there too. So it gives you more of that crispity crunch with even more cheese. And it's freaking delicious. I would do it every single time if I had the foresight.
And are you telling me that's better than tofu dogs in a microwave and toaster oven, and like on the road, barely be able to like scratch 2 pennies together of food to eat? Or?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Like Ray and I were talking about this before. Like when we were on tour, all these stories we tell of being on the road. We were. I was a vegan. You were just vegetarian, right? Like you still ate.
I was pescatarian at the time. I had that was after I owned my Boar's Head route with my brother. And I learned so much that for 10 years I was a pescatarian.
Right. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So yeah, but I remember like first time I ever went grocery shop. For 2 grown men, we've done a lot of grocery shopping together. Like I remember the first time we ever went grocery shopping together. Like you're just like, oh man, how much money do you got? I was like, oh, $10. You're like, oh, well, I got $10 too. That means we can get some vegan cheese, we can get some tofu pups, and we get potato rolls, and we can microwave them. And I remember you being like, that's good eating right there. I was like, okay.
And now you and I are sous videing like fine ribeye cuts with like, so the meat has definitely come back into play.
Yeah, the meat has definitely come back into the play. Here's what's interesting. So whenever I really enjoy live tweeting my cooking. Like it's fun, and like being a radio guy, it is my job. I have to do this. Like I have to, like there's got to be times where the corporate bean counters for the company I work for go through and be like, how much social traffic is young AD driving? A little less than this guy. Perhaps we'll fire him. It's constant fear. Like there's an axe waiting over my head, constantly threatening to fall. So I'm always trying to figure out something I can do that's, organic, that works, that I enjoy. And I really enjoy live tweeting cooking, and people seem to enjoy interacting and trading recipe ideas. It's a lot of fun. So I do that pretty often. But what's interesting is, when I stopped being vegan, I kind of just I went buck wild for literally buck wild for several years, where I ate as much meat as humanly possible. And then the humanitarian aspect of it, the health aspect of it, the environmental aspect of it does sort of like, it did for me anyway, really start to creep back into my thinking. And I was just like, I really don't eat that. I basically cut 2/3 of the meat out of my diet. I eat it very little during the week, and it's, I grill almost religiously on the weekend. But it's funny because like people see my stuff and they're like, how do you eat like this and you're not 350 pounds? And I was just like, I don't eat like this all the time. Like, so it looks like super extravagant. It's one of those things like, look, his life looks better on Instagram. It looks super, because when I'm drinking a meal replacement shake in the middle of the day, I don't commit that to internet posterity in the same way. But like, I actually don't eat that way. Like once a week I eat that way, and then the leftovers. But yeah, no, like but yeah, we our tastes have definitely become more sophisticated over the years. That vegan cheese I used to get, it turned to powder in the microwave, and I was so happy to have anything cheese-like on a hot dog. I'd be like, oh man, I got cheese dogs for the 4th of July. Yeah, those are salty. I remember those being better when I was a kid. I had one. I was like, nah, I don't need to go back to that.
They're not nearly as good. So, well, cool. I'm very happy. I'm very happy that we've moved on to much finer cuts.
Oh,
and finer pieces.
Do you? Sorry, like we should have wrapped this up a lot. I'm always the one being like, our podcast really could be shorter. Nobody wants to hear us talk about cooking for 82 minutes and 11 seconds, which is what it's been at this point.
By this point, they probably aren't.
Yeah, by this point, they probably aren't. That's true. Yeah. Roll call? No one? Okay, cool. Well, it's just you and I talking about food the way we usually do. But
right.
I was going to say something about cooking, hot dog. Oh, so when you're watching MLB TV, often they run the same ads over and over again. Have you gotten those ads for the Johnsonville sausages and brats?
Yeah, Johnsonville has Johnsonville does two things well. commercials. Whoever writes their commercials is very, very, very good on point. They have some very funny commercials, and I gotta admit, their sausages are well done sausages. They're well made. Meaning, I like their stuff.
You're a bit more fancy. You spent that time in Italy learning to cook, so you probably have like your own organic sausage casing that you make.
No, I'm bougie as all hell, and like this is why you and I were twittering early this week, and I came out flattened and said that Dodger dogs are the most disgusting hot dog I've ever had in my entire life. I don't understand the attraction of them. I've had them at the stadium.
Do you know what they are? Like, I mean, I'm sure they buy them from someone. Is it Costco or it's not Nathan's? Because that would be okay. Like,
they take poop and they put poop in a casing. And
oh God. But man, those Johnsonville ads that they run on the MLB app work, because that was the other thing I got. Like, I got hot dogs, I got hamburgers, and I got a bunch of Johnsonville beer brats, which are scrumdiddlyumptious with a mustard. Well done, Johnson. Sponsor this podcast.
Yes, Johnson should totally sponsor.
Johnsonville, sorry.
Johnsonville. They, I give them credit. I think you and I were tweeting back and forth, and I gave super duper cred personally to Nathan's Coney Island Classics, the natural casings with their beef natural casings. To me, always natural casing, and Hoffy. I'll give credit to Hoffy. They do a good dog.
I like the I like the Hebrew National, like the beef Hebrew National. Those have that sort of like explosion of grease when you bite into them that I really appreciate.
My wife is literally standing over my shoulder telling me, She's disagreeing with my choices.
We're disagreeing with your hot dog choices?
Hell yeah.
Well, do you like Dodger dogs?
Hell yeah, I do.
Oh, disgusting.
I've lived on Dodger dogs for my whole entire life.
Then how'd you get so pretty?
Kicking in your balls.
I think this is a good place to probably be shelving.
You want to know what the most disgusting thing I ever used to do before I learned how to cook was? This used to be dinner for me, and I'll leave it at this, just to show how far we've come. I used to take uncut hot dogs, dip them into ranch dressing, and eat them. That was dinner. And I wouldn't even pour out a bowl of this stuff. I would just dip it right into the bottle of ranch dressing, be like, 3 times in a day. Who could it hurt?
You are what we would call one classy broad.
Yeah, okay.
Dodger girls love Dodger dogs, just so you know.
First of all, you're a Giants girl, not a Dodger girl.
I'm with both.
That is physiologically.
And I'm a Padres girl, so.
Oh my Lord.
Nothing for nothing.
So my wife likes anything related to the West Coast.
Well, hey, I mean, traversed up and down it and built up a sense of loyalty to all of it. As many people like your wife I know say, the West is the best.
I told you though, like she literally, like we were watching the Mets game, Nimmo made that fantastic catch. I pointed out, I said, "Look, baby, look how great that catch is." And she says, 10 years ago, there was a catch against the Giants, and you pointed out how good it was, and she literally would not.
It was a playoff game. It was literally the last playoff game.
She should be an archaeologist. So damn Hey, Indiana Jones, tell me about it.
I was like, are you kidding me?
And on that note,
we'll see you next week, folks. Enjoy the All-Star game.
Okay, bye.